Psalm 50 is a psalm of Asaph. Asaph, a Levite of the Gershonite family, was appointed over the service of praise during the time of David and Solomon. He led the singing, sounded the cymbals before the ark, and apparently set up a school of music. 12 psalms are credited to Asaph, but this accreditation does not necessarily imply authorship. It may mean no more than that these psalms constituted an Asaphic collection, begun by the great man and then prolonged over the years by the Asaph singers. The psalms themselves cover a long span of time and have a deep and contemplative nature. Psalm 50 is a covenant lawsuit brought by God against his consecrated ones who made a covenant with him by sacrifice. This sort of legal practice was common in the Old Testament as a means by which God aired Israel's shortcomings and justified his judgment upon the nation. The psalmist says, "The Mighty One, God the Lord speaks, I will not accept bulls and goats, for you hate discipline. Offer a sacrifice of thanksgiving." Psalm 51 is a Davidic psalm that's introduced with the words, when the prophet Nathan came to him after David had committed adultery with Bathsheba. David says, "Have mercy on me, O God, cleanse me from my sin. Do not cast me away from your presence. A broken heart, O God, you will not despise." Now, when David cries out to God in repentance after his sin with Bathsheba, he says, "Cleanse me with hyssop." This is not an insignificant request. Hyssop was used as a healing ointment for wounds. It cleansed the wounds so that healing could begin. But this wasn't a comfortable process by any means. It hurt. It burned. David isn't saying, "Take my sin away from me." He's saying, "Burn this sin right out of me." It'd be like saying, "God, pour battery acid on me until all the evil in me has been burned up." Also, healing doesn't always come quickly. David never fully recovered from the consequences of his sin. However, his wound would never have been healed at all had it not first been cleansed. Psalm 52 is a Davidic psalm that's introduced with the words, "When Doeg the Edomite had gone to Saul and told him, David has gone to the house of Ahimelech." This resulted in Saul murdering the priests who had aided David when he was fleeing Saul. David says, "Why do you boast of evil, O mighty man? Surely God will bring you down to ruin, but I am like a green olive tree in the house of God." Although there is evidence that ancient Israel was far more forested than it is today, the presence of flourishing trees was still a sign of divine blessing for former nomads living on the fringes of a settled agricultural society. The Old Testament presents a thriving tree as symbolic of the blessing of the righteous. This blessing is frequently contrasted with the sad state of the wicked, depicted in terms of non-productive dryness. Olive trees, which live for hundreds of years, weren't actually planted in the temple courts. In Psalm 53, David says, "The fool says in his heart, there is no God. There is no one who does good. Will evildoers never learn? God has rejected them." Psalm 54 is a Davidic psalm which is introduced with the words, "When the Ziphites had gone to Saul and said, 'Is not David hiding among us?'" This also would have been when David was on the run from Saul, who was still trying to kill him. David says, "Save me, O God, for strangers have risen against me. God is my helper. He will repay my enemies. I will praise your name, O Lord." In Psalm 55, David says, "Give ear to my prayer, O God. My heart is in anguish. It is my equal, my friend who rises against me. Cast your burden on the Lord." However, we don't know what friend David is referring to here. Psalm 56 is also a Davidic psalm which begins with a note for the director of music that it is to be sung to the tune of a popular song at the time called "A Dove on Distant Oaks." The context of the psalm was also given, that it's from or about that time when David was again on the run from Saul and the Philistines had seized him in Gath. David says, "Be gracious to me, O God, for my enemies trample on me. Are my tears not in your wineskin? In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust." This image seems to reflect the practice in the arid climate of Israel of preserving precious liquids in a leak-proof leather bag. The image of saving tears is powerful. David's tears of lament were precious to God.